Welcome to the Movies of the Damn podcast. My name is Kyle Grant, and I'm sitting here, as always, with my friend and published horror author, John Hunt. If you enjoy what you hear here today, please subscribe to our YouTube channel. Check out our Facebook page and follow us on both Instagram and Twitter at Damn Movies. Email us any questions, comments, and suggestions to moviesthedamned@gmail.com. For further details on John's published works, please visit his blog, johnhuntfiction.wordpress.com. Today, we'll be discussing Adam Wingard's 2016 found footage supernatural horror, Blair Witch. This is a direct sequel to the original Blair Witch project and completely throws out the events of the actual sequel, The Blair Witch Part 2. This movie follows the brother of one of the original characters from Blair Witch Project as he and a group of friends attempt to head back to the forest and find out exactly what happened to her. Things soon go terribly wrong as it looks as if the Blair Witch is again messing with the group. In the end, they get picked off one by one, with them ultimately dying again in the corners of the house. Thank you very much to the friend of the podcast, Sean Small, for recommending this one. I kind of already laid my cards on the table at the end of last week's episode as far as what I thought of this movie. But John, I'm interested to hear what you think. Should be a good discussion. John, opening thoughts on the movie.
So for sure, I forgot that the original, but I didn't forget, but the sequel to the original Blair Witch wasn't a found footage. So I should have known.
No.
I should have known that this was a found footage. I should have, but it didn't even occur to me that it was when you suggested it. I'm like, okay, well, let's watch it and whatever, right? And let's start off by saying I like this movie. I enjoyed this movie, but I'm tired of found footage films and zombie films. I think we need to take a break from them for a bit.
And I get what you're saying, right? Because over the first, 101 episodes now, we've done a ton of zombie movies. We've done a bunch of found footage movies. And you have had those criticisms in the past that kind of like with a lot of these found footage movies, it's almost as if you're kind of watching the same thing over and over again, the same jump scares over and over again. So no, I'm perfectly fine with us kind of going in a new direction for some other movies, but I'm actually happy to hear that you like this movie.
Oh yeah, it had some pretty good arm hair raising moments, which is unusual for me to say the least. Like I don't normally get, I wouldn't say scared, but uneasy, right? So I was uneasy in this one. I hardly ever get scared. I can't remember the last movie that, like I said, followed me into my bedroom where I, might have dreamed about it or thought about it or couldn't go to sleep because of it. But this one certainly had some hair-raising moments, some tense moments, and it was enjoyable to watch. And I think I'm raising some good horror fans because Sophie wanted to watch this one too, and she watched it as well. So, as well as she watched The Shining, right? So, all of us are kind of watching them together. So this is getting to be pretty good. I'm enjoying.
Had Sophie seen the original Blair Witch Project?
No.
Oh, okay. So, I guess this is kind of a standalone. It's you didn't have to have seen that first one, I guess.
No, you didn't have to at all. Like if you look at it this way, it's like they kind of described what happened in the first one and this one and why they're interested in going back and investigating it. And you didn't even need a full prior film for that because that's like been the start of many different films, right? Oh, my sister got lost here, or oh, my cousin got lost here, or you know what I mean? And they all go and investigate it, and terrible things happen. So you didn't really need to see the original in this case, I thought.
No, you just said that perfectly. You really didn't, right? This could have been a standalone movie just about a brother who's just so driven to get answers about what happened to his sister. You really didn't have to have the first one. Or like this one could have come out first and then they could have done a prequel for the Blair Witch Project. You're right. It's a standalone movie in its own.
For sure. I thought so. Anyways, here's an interesting point though. I thought, so this is what, so he lost his sister when he was 4 years old, right? So she went missing when he was 4.
Yes.
And I was like, well, what type of attachment would you have at 4? Like, what do you remember at 4, right? And so me and Louise were discussing this, and like I say, like, yeah, obviously you'd be curious, but I don't think there'd be such an emotional attachment or that emotional drive where you'd want to go investigate some sinister woods where your sister disappeared. You know what I mean? It doesn't have the same, to me anyways, it doesn't have the same physical oomph that it would if, like, say, um, your mother went missing when you were like 12 years old because you've known her for 12 years. And, I mean, there's an attachment that formed and one that you remember. Whereas, when you're 4, one day your sister's there, the next day she's not. But then the years go by and you remember less and less of her. I don't know if it was, for me anyways, a strong enough emotional attachment to want to go. For curiosity's sake, for sure. But curiosity's sake at the risk of danger, I'm not so sure.
All right, I both agree and disagree with you at the same time. So
Yep.
no, I completely agree with what you're saying. You're 4. He would have no memories of a sister, and if he did, it would be like a fleeting memory. So you're right, that connection wouldn't be there. However, he would have grown up in a home where maybe this has completely wrecked his parents. It has completely wrecked his upbringing, and there's just so many unanswered questions. Maybe his parents are still torn up about it, and he wants to bring some closure to them. So that's what's really pushing him.
That's cool. And I can appreciate that, but they didn't mention any of that in the film. Like, he could have used that as a motivation,
Yeah,
He could have said, my parents still haven't recovered. They talk about this all the time. They wonder what happened to her. And, they've spent money on private investigators, whatever. He could have added whatever line in there to show that. But they didn't. It was all about him and his curiosity. And they kind of alluded to some sort of trauma, which, I don't want to dismiss any of that stuff because I don't know. I really don't know. But
yeah.
I would think that, at 4, the trauma would come from, like you said, watching the parents maybe having to deal with this tremendous loss, right? Where it wouldn't be actually from missing someone you don't really remember.
Yeah, and I completely know what you're saying, and regardless what the true motivations were, I personally didn't feel like it was a bad decision to go and investigate this.
Mm,
I
okay,
like
so
it wasn't a bad decision as in like, oh, these guys, you know how in horror movies all the time you're like, oh, that was such a stupid decision, they had it coming. To me, these characters didn't have it coming. They wanted to investigate this, whether they were curious or there was that emotional connection. Regardless, either or, they decide they want to investigate this. They go in. As soon as things start to be weird, they try and get out right away, and they can't.
I know I did mention that. I was talking to Sophie and Ella, and and when that happened, I go, look, that's really good. That's not a stupid decision. Something weird happened. They're like, let's pack up, let's go. I'm like, I'm on board with that. That's a great decision.
Exactly.
I enjoyed that part. You know what? I do got to ask you though. Like, how I forget the character's name. Ashley, it was who cut her foot.
Okay.
Her foot.
Yes.
So she cut her foot, and then she had the fever and all that type of stuff going on, right? And there's something moved at the bottom of her foot. Do you remember that scene?
I noted it. It was a huge jump scare for me. I'd already seen this movie before, but even
Hmm.
watching it through again, like it made me jump.
Okay, so here's my question to you, right? So they made it was an elaborate part of the movie. She's walking in the river. She cuts her feet. She needs medical attention. She gets the medical attention. They tell her to take it easy. And as she's walking more and more, like when they're trying to leave, it's hurting her more. You keep hearing that crack, right? Some weird crack when she's walking. And then, so a lot of the stuff revolves around this injury to her foot. And she's in the tent. She's injured. Something moves under the skin of the foot. Boyfriend kind of jumps at it, dismisses it. Uh, my question is, what did that have to do with this movie?
What did that have to do with this movie?
Like,
Well,
like
I guess
nothing came out of her. She wasn't possessed. Like, what was the point of having something moving around under her skin and just having her killed off simply later on with nothing to do with her foot.
I guess it was a bit of a jump scare. I guess it was intended to slow them down a little bit. Uh, but you're right. It definitely was a side story. It wasn't the main story. And I can't argue with you that if you want to say it wasn't necessary, that's fine. But I think it added to the movie.
So if it adds to the movie, then it's necessary. But I think it doesn't add to the movie when you start a side story and just abandon it.
Okay, yeah, and I can't argue with you other than the fact that I thought it did have a great jump scare for the viewers, and I thought that maybe it slows them down a little bit so they don't have a chance to get out of there. Although it seemed like it
I
was
think,
impossible for them to get out.
yeah, I think that had nothing to do with it. Nothing to do with it. They every time they got scared, they ran off on each other, right?
Yeah,
I think it had nothing to do with it. Uh, like it did, like for slowing them down purposes. I mean, I would agree that it provided an eerie sense in the background and maybe a bit of a jump scare. I didn't jump at all, but it was. I don't know. I just for me, it was just like okay, they put this in here, and I expected something to come of it. You know
yeah,
what I mean?
nothing did.
And nothing
Oh,
did. So I was
and
just like,
yeah, I get what you're saying there. And the only reason it caused me the jump scare, John, is because when they undid that bandage, I was expecting to see something really gross. I thought it was
mm-hmm,
going to be like a gross out moment.
yeah.
And then they kind of did the switcheroo on me, at least. And instead of the gross out moment, it was the thing moving. And so that's what kind of startled me a little bit.
No, and that's fine. It's just like I'm kind of immune to those type of things because I've when they were unwrapping the bandage, I was like, okay, just like you, either we're going to see something gross or something's going to come out of the cut. Like those are the only two options. Like why are they taking such a long time to unwrap this? Why they're
Yeah.
taking such attention to detail of this, right? So for that's kind of, and I've seen a bunch of movies where that actually happens. There's an injury, they're in a weird environment, something gets in, and then something grows inside this injury, and then comes out, right? It's just like it's a staple to a lot of subplot points in movies. So I was expecting something, which is probably why I didn't jump. You know.
Oh, okay. No, no, fair enough. And I can't argue with your point though, as to that it was integral to the story or anything like that. But I guess it didn't ruin the movie for me.
No, it did not.
This was so, the thing that I really liked about this, John, and I don't know if you agree with me or not, is that it was kind of so similar to the Blair Witch Project, but then also so different. And it's so different in the fact of the almost like the Blair Witch was able to kind of like manipulate time.
Hmm.
And I found that very interesting. And it was something that I remember when I watched this movie the first time when it came out a few years ago, kind of really, I don't want to say messed with me, but it's something I thought about a lot afterwards about like the manipulation of time throughout this movie. Did that do anything for you?
I That's the part that I liked about this movie. That was like a unique twist to this whole genre, right? So because each group of people, when they're separated, were experiencing different moments in time, different speeds in time. So
Yeah.
I thought that was very interesting, especially with Lane, right? Like he grew a full on beard in what for us seemed like a couple of like for the group of the characters, wasn't even a complete night. You know what I mean? And for him, he was like, "We've been wandering around for 5 days." That's what he says when they
Buddy,
first.
I noted that line. It's been
Hmm.
5 days since we saw you. The
Hmm.
sun's not coming up. Like
Yeah.
that line gave me the creeps. I kind of have the shivers when I just reciting it now.
So I like that part. It was very unique. It was very, very so. Okay, I was talking maybe to you about this, or it might have been Louise. Like so, the Blair Witch is an older movie, and I remember I saw it, and it was like it had a very big impact. I think it's like it spawned a lot of found footage films. Actually, I think it's like one of the ones that influenced the influx of such films. Um, but for me, the whole premise behind that film, the thing that made it special, the thing that made it unique at the time, was the belief, the marketing that it was a true story, right?
Yeah. Yep, I
So,
agree.
and that was a huge point of it, right? They marketed it that to hell and back. It's like Okay, so then you go and see it, and like I did, and I was like, okay, that's the only special thing about the film, except for the ending.
I was just about to add that
Yeah,
it's the ending. Like the movie's okay, but it's just that the lasting imprint of that ending is what kind of puts it over the top.
for sure. For like puts it in something I wouldn't like.
Special.
Yeah, just unique, right? Or something that's worth watching, right? Whereas almost up until that point, I was like, okay, I get it. You're lost. You're scared. You hear noises at night. The woods are dark. I get it. There's like little stick figures and piles of rocks everywhere. Creepy. I get it. You can't get out. I get it. Okay, let's go on. Let's move on. Right? It's just like a typical for me, it's like the suspense wasn't strong enough to keep me riveted like it would in The Shining or something else, right? So it was the ending that made it that actually gave me the real chills and the real creeps, and I really appreciated that. And it's one of those things where it's like, um, even though the entire rest of the movie wasn't really that special to me, it built up perfectly towards that amazing ending. You know what I mean? So it's like,
I'm on board. Yeah.
yeah. So it's like, but like I didn't. So when you mentioned this film to me, I was like, ugh. I didn't really want to watch the sequel again because, I mean, the first one again because like I just said, like it's like almost an hour and a half of just meh, and then for the 2 minutes of awesome, right?
Yeah.
So I think this film had more to it, and it's definitely worth watching. I enjoyed it. It had some good creepy moments to it. The acting was good. The storyline was fairly well laid out. Nothing too crazy here, other than the thing that was unique and I thought new was the thing that we just discussed, which was the time altering, and I enjoyed that aspect to it for sure.
One cool scene which I thought was some cool special effects. When the one girl kind of breaks the stick figure and the other girl kind of breaks in half herself.
Oh yeah, I forgot to mention that. I really enjoyed that as well. I'm like, oh my god, like a voodoo doll, right? It's exactly what it was. And I was like, oh my god, that's really cool. That's cool how they incorporated a voodoo doll thing into this whole not genre, I guess, but universe, film universe of the Blair Witch. And I remember Sophie jumped at that like it was like a squeal, right? So it's like it was a good scene, man, for sure.
No, really good scene. And then also, I think I told you last week that I love the final act of this movie, and that's when you're kind of, as we've already discussed, I don't want to call it time travel, but time altering is going on.
Yeah.
And then I know we've seen it before, John, and you probably didn't like this, but the manipulation at the end. For some reason, the when like the bad spirit or the Blair Witch in this case is able to manipulate people, it just creeps me out so much. So how she convinces them, I guess, to turn around from the corner.
So the first one I thought was fairly okay, right? So when the Blair Witch got James to turn around because
Yeah,
he's like, oh, Heather, right? Thought it was his sister, and
yeah.
started and turned to talk to her again. I was like, okay, I guess that's all right. Even though they told us throughout this film, don't look at the Blair Witch,
Yeah.
right? They told us the whole time, and they went and stood in the corner because they knew the Blair Witch was coming behind them.
Hmm.
And he said, don't look at her, don't look at her, don't look at her. And then and then he hears Heather's voice and he's like, oh, it must be Heather now. And turns. I was like, okay, I can get behind that because he was there the whole time trying to find his sister, and it was like something that it was his drive, it was his motivation, it was his drive behind a lot of the actions that he took. Um, with her, I was like, no, 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 no. I
You don't think she would have turned around, eh?
No, like as soon as he just died in front of her after she just heard him say Heather, and then it was like, who are you talking to? Like she's like, there's no one here. Like she mentions something along those lines, like, who are you talking to? Something like that. So she knows it's not like that's not whoever he thinks it is. And then like 2 seconds later, it's like, James. And then she, like, it wasn't a long time, right?
It
It,
wasn't a long time. You're right.
it
I
was
just thought
like
it was
probably
clever.
it was probably 10 seconds, and then she's like, "Okay, I'll turn around, James." Right? Like, no, I didn't buy that at all. I was like,
Yeah.
they just
Now you're poking holes in it, and you're right when you explain it. But I guess just in the moment, I thought it was good in the moment. I guess.
yeah. So like, don't get me wrong, the visuals, her acting, his acting, phenomenal. I think they did a great job. But I'm watching it in the moment. I'm like, okay, well, what would this character? I'm thinking like, what would this character do? Like, I can't see that person doing that. Like, I got behind James only because of that, right? But it's like I was still like not 100% on James because he was telling her to stand in the corner and not look at the Blair Witch. You know what I mean? Like he was telling her the rules, and then he goes and breaks them, right? It's just so I was just like, okay, but I guess he's wanted to know a long time about his sister, and he's willing to chance it. I don't even know why he would chance it. Now I'm still actually I'm talking myself out of it. I don't even think I can get behind James turning around now. But yeah, it was a cool sequence. Like it was really like she used the camera to see behind her. You know what I mean? I thought that aspect of it was clever, but them turning around, I'm like, if they did like some sort of weird transition music where it's like, um, like it kind of insinuated them letting their guard down or something like that, or maybe they do some sort of sequence where the time seems a lot longer than it was, so it seems like more time has passed. I might have been able to, but they didn't do anything. It was just like, okay, don't look at her, don't look at her, James. No, 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 right?
No, I hear you. I hear you. I hear you. I just like the movie.
So do I.
Maybe I'm just a sucker for it, but I just like the story. I was into it the entire time. I just enjoyed this film through. You know who didn't enjoy it though, John? The critics.
No,
37 Rotten Tomatoes critic score.
wow, they're pretty harsh sometimes.
Audience score 31.
Wow, really, eh? Hmm.
Yeah, this one confuses me. I just don't understand.
No,
Like I can see.
I think that's a one of those ones where it's unrealized expectations.
It must be, but
Mm-hmm.
it's just tough for me to understand why someone would give this a thumbs down. I can
Mm-hmm.
definitely get if someone says to me, "Oh, this isn't my favorite horror movie. I wasn't that scared." I can get that, but to say it was a bad movie, I
Mm-hmm.
don't know.
Mm-hmm.
Uh,
No, definitely not a bad movie. Definitely not.
had a bit of a return at the box office, nothing huge. Made for 5 million, ended up bringing in a little over 45. But I think that was a little bit of a disappointment. Um, I personally think that this could have been a huge franchise, and they just mismanaged it. They
Well,
mismanaged it. They
the
mismanaged it completely.
well, the second one, right, was extremely disappointing.
Exactly, right?
But
They rushed the second one coming out. So the original gets released in 99 and they rush to get that sequel out there 1 year later and they just botch it and they ruin it and then they wait so long to get this movie out. Like this doesn't come out until 2016. So you've lost all the momentum from the original.
I
If they had have not made the second one and just brought this one out maybe 3 or 4 years later, I firmly believe there would be like a Blair Witch 7 out there, which probably wouldn't be good, but you know what I mean? It would have become one of those iconic horror franchises.
um, I don't think so, and this is why. Like I think I said it before. the The reason why the first one was special is because of the marketing that it was real. That can't carry over into the sequel. It can't. All that's gone, right? So then what do you have left? You have like a new and compelling story. Now this is a good. This was a good movie. Don't get me wrong, but it wasn't a new and compelling story, right? It wouldn't. It and the first one didn't have the type of um, transition to a sequel as like say Scream does or any of those other
Or
type of
Saw.
or Saw or even Paranormal Activity, right? Like Paranormal Activity, they just chose a new family, right? So it's just
Yeah.
um, I just don't think I don't think I think the first one I think it was good as a one off because I think the original movie was a lesson in marketing, and I think if a lot of people who were in marketing were paying attention to that, they probably developed a lot of future strategies off of that. Because I'm telling you, like most of that movie was meh, except for the end. But how do you get a bunch of people to show up to the movies to see it? That marketing, that it was a real thing. This is found footage. This is a real thing, right? And I don't think I don't see that carrying over to make it a huge franchise, um, without because that mystery is gone, in my opinion. So
Yeah, and I guess we'll never know. I just really think that things would have been different if, again, the sequel never comes out and this comes out maybe 3 or 4 years after the original. I really think things would have been different, but I guess we'll just have to agree to disagree.
no, I agree with that premise. I just don't think it would be a huge franchise. So I think if they didn't take away number two, because you would have a lot of people who love number one, like from 1999, and say they made this one in 2003. You'd have a lot of people from 1999 still interested. So
Yeah.
you just get people showing up for sure, for sure. But then they'd see
Hmm.
this one and they'd be like, okay, well, how do you do a sequel off of this one? You know what I mean? I think it's not.
Yeah.
I think the franchise wouldn't go much further than this one. I wouldn't think it would be such a huge franchise.
No, no. Yeah, I hear you. Another interesting tidbit I found about this one is they kept it a secret. When they were filming this thing, they didn't let anyone know that it had a connection to Blair Witch, and it was being filmed under the fake title The Woods.
Oh wow!
And actually, when they first screened it at a festival, it was screamed. It was screened as The Woods. Like there was fake posters and everything. And then midway through the movie, when people started realizing that obviously it had a connection to Blair Witch, and by the end they had replaced the posters with the real posters.
Oh, that's funny. That's cool though. I like that.
Yeah, it's kind of wild, right? So I guess if you ever get invited to a screening for a film, you never know what it could turn out to be, right?
That's true. That's true. I like
Uh,
that. That's an interesting bit of lore.
yeah, just a little tidbit on this one. Again, we're both thumbs up. We disagree with the critics. We disagree with the audience score. What do you think about my claim last week, John, that this is a highly underrated movie? Can you get behind that?
Yeah, definitely. It's a movie that's worth your time. And if it's a movie's worth your time and it's getting such the scores that it is, it's definitely underrated, right? Like it definitely is. I think you can't go wrong spending an hour and a half watching this movie if you like horror movies.
Yeah, and again, even if you haven't seen the Blair Witch Project,
You
you can
don't need
still
to.
watch this one.
Yeah.
No, hop on Netflix, check it out. It's worth the watch. Anything
I would
else?
argue that this one's better than the original.
You know what? I haven't had a ton of time to think about that. Like I just haven't thought about it. But you could be right because you kind of described the first one perfectly. It was kind of okay and then iconic ending.
Yeah.
So you know what? You know what? Just on the spur of the moment, I might have to say this one's better too.
Yeah. I think uh, on almost every aspect. It wasn't slow in the way the first one was slow. It just wasn't, and it still had you waiting for. And I even liked the part because it had me waiting for people standing in the corner at the end. Like it had me waiting for that, right? And
Yeah, yeah, yeah.
when it happened, I was like, "Oh my god, this is so good!" Right? So it made me happy to see that. So I would definitely argue that this is better.
But so you kind of knew it was coming, but it also didn't feel like a rip off. You know what I'm saying?
No, so you knew it was coming, but you didn't know when it was coming. And then
Yeah.
also with the way the film was going, you weren't sure that it was coming. So I liked it. I liked the whole presentation of it, and the delivery was really well done.
Yeah. Strongly agree, my friend. Anything else to add?
No, I do not, sir.
So then all we have is, again, thank you very much, Sean Small, for the recommendation. Again, as I said last week, Sean kind of sent us a list of a few movies, and this one really hopped out to me as one I wanted to discuss. So thanks very much, Sean. And next, buddy, hop on Netflix again. We're going with a Sam Raimi film, Drag Me to Hell.
Sam Raimi, yeah.
Have you seen this one, John?
Um, I started watching it a while ago, and then I think one of the kids came down when they were younger, so I had to stop watching it, obviously. And then I don't
Yeah,
think I
yeah.
got around back to watching it, so I haven't seen it all. But just to say, like, I'm a huge Sam Raimi fan. Evil Dead, Spider Man, all that's like I like him, man. I like him, so
Uh,
I'm happy to see this.
I've seen this movie once before
Hmm.
when it first came out. I remember liking it.
Hmm.
I don't remember a ton about it, but I remember enjoying it. So I'm eager to go back and watch it again.
Well, if it's Sam Raimi, it's going to have like those. He's had very distinct visuals, right? You ever see Dark Man? He has like,
Yeah,
yeah, he has distinct visuals, like action sequences. So I'm looking forward to those, right? Where it's all of a sudden everything's calm, and then you turn around, and then the person's hair is blowing back, and their eyes are black, and they're screaming. Like he does that a lot, right? So I'm looking forward to that because I do enjoy those sequences.
I remember a cool ending, but that's all I'm going to say.
All right, let's. I can't wait. Can't wait.
Yeah, so folks, hop on Netflix and make sure you join us again next week. As well, please subscribe to our YouTube channel, check out our Facebook page, and follow us on both Twitter and Instagram at Damn Movies. We want to hear what you thought of today's podcast and any suggestions you have, especially in terms of what movies you'd like us to discuss next. Send us an email to moviesofthedamned@gmail.com. Please also check out John's full-length novels. His first two novels, Dollhouse and The Tracker, are Amazon bestsellers. You can also order his novella Balance, his book of short stories, Four Shots of Horror, and his newest novel, Off the Grid, all right now on Amazon. For further details on John's other published works, please visit his blog, johnhuntfiction.wordpress.com. Thanks for listening, and we'll see you next time.
Yeah, everyone, thanks for listening. Let me know in the comments or wherever you want to do it, the email, Twitter, YouTube, whatever, how I sound. I got a new mic, so I just want to know if it translates very well into the audio world. And thanks for listening. Have a great week. Be kind, everyone.